Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live today. It is so great to see so many of you in the audience. We haven't had a Facebook Live here at My Heritage on our Facebook page in quite a while, so it's a really exciting day for us. And we have such a great lineup for you today that it's such a great Facebook Live to bring to you after not having one for quite a while. So we are so excited. It's going to be fantastic. I hope that you'll all learn a lot, get a lot out of this session. I see we have people tuning in from all over the world. So if you haven't yet, please do write in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. It's so great to see that no matter how far we are and where we are in the corner of the world, we can come together and learn about genealogy, DNA, family history, something that we are all interested in and all excited to learn about. So thank you all for joining us. Let's see. I see John from Ohio, Pat from Texas. We have Ruth from Indiana. It seems like I'm reading a lot of people from the United States, but there are people from all over the world actually that are tuning in. So please, if you haven't yet, leave us a comment. Let us know where you're joining us from, what time of day, what's the weather, where you are. We're always interested in hearing from all of our viewers. In addition, we have 2 giveaways for today's session. So it's going to be really exciting for our viewers. We're going to be giving away a MyHeritage Complete Plan and a MyHeritage DNA Kit for our lucky viewers. So in order to enter, all that you have to do is to leave a comment and tell us about a MyHeritage discovery, any discovery that you've made, something exciting that you found out. It doesn't have to be just DNA, even though we'll be talking about DNA mostly today. It could be, just finding a picture, finding a photo through a relative that you uncovered on MyHeritage, or getting a record match with a record and learning something about an ancestor that you didn't know. So leave us your comments and tell us about all your discoveries that you've made. We'd love to hear about it. And we'll be choosing 2 lucky winners, and one will get a MyHeritage Complete Plan. That'll give you access to all of our historical records. We're over 20 billion historical records, as well as all of our family tree tools and photo tools. So that is a fantastic gift. And the second giveaway is a MyHeritage DNA Kit, which we all know how incredible and amazing that is. And I'm sure you'll hear more about it today. And it's especially a good time to receive a MyHeritage DNA Kit leading up to the holidays. We have all the holidays coming up, and there's no better time than stocking up on MyHeritage DNA Kits, which leads me to my next topic, which is our DNA sale that we have going on right now. MyHeritage DNA Kits are $39. They're on sale. So it's a great opportunity, like I said, to stock up and to make sure that you're prepared well in time for the holidays. So definitely take advantage of that. And we'll be putting links in the comment section to the MyHeritage DNA Kit so that you can definitely jump on that bandwagon if you haven't yet. and definitely for all your friends and family that you're interested in having them get tested. So I would now like to introduce our speakers, and I'll bring them onto the screen one by one, which will be really, really fun for us all. So let's see. Who do we have with us today? We have a full house. So we have, I'm just gonna make sure that I'm introducing them in the right way. So we have with us Diahan Southard. She's got over 20 years of genetic genealogy experience. She built her company, Your DNA Guide, to show that learning DNA does not have to be intimidating. And I'll bring her onto the screen here. Let's see. There we go. Hello, Diahan.
Hi, Esther.
Hi, Esther.
Welcome. And now let's introduce Janna Helshtein. She's a genetic genealogist from Israel and a public speaker, a storyteller about DNA mysteries. She works on adoptee cases and is very passionate about raising awareness for the wonderful world of DNA in Israel. So let me bring her on here. Oh, it looks like I'm having a problem. Let's see. It looks to be stalled. Let's just try and bring Janna into the screen here. There we go. Hello, Janna. How are you?
Hello, I'm well, thank you.
Okay, and now let's bring on our third and our last guest. We have Roberta Estes. She's a longtime genealogist and scientist. She's written a blog about genetic genealogy at dna-explain.com, and we'll put all the links to all of our lovely guests' websites and materials in the comments section. So let's bring Roberta on here to say hello. Hello, Roberta.
Hi, everybody.
I think I see you a little bit frozen here. Let's see. Let's see if it's working. Roberta, are you there?
I'm here, and it's not frozen on my end, but
okay. Okay, great. So I hope it's all working. And if you have any problems with the video throughout, please leave us a message so we can see that it's all working. We'd love to know just that everything's working. It's great to see you all here. We love having this crew. It's fantastic. So we thought we'd start it off by just asking you all some general questions just to start off before we get into questions from our audience. A lot of our users sent in questions before, so we're really excited to get to all of those. But before we do, let's hear from everyone. What made you get into DNA and how you started in this field? Janna, you want to start?
Sure. Well, for me, it was very personal. I was searching for my ex-husband's biological father, and I just thought that, I'm just going to do that. I'm going to learn about it. I'm going to do that, find him eventually, and just go off my way. And I got the DNA bug. And it was like a first shot of very, very addictive drug. And I haven't stopped ever since.
Amazing. Diane, do you want to share with us how you entered this wonderful world of genetic genealogy?
Yes, we can trace it all the way back to my high school English teacher. He told all of us graduating seniors that the best thing we could do was to find a professor who was researching something we were interested in and get involved just as soon as we got to college. And so I wanted to do something with genetics, and I found Dr. Scott Woodward, who was researching the DNA of ancient Egyptian mummies. And I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Let's do that. That project turned into one of the very first efforts to do genetic genealogy called the Sorensen Molecular Genealogy Foundation. And I've never known anything else. I just started doing it in college and after college, and here I am.
Beautiful. And Roberta, how about you?
I'm a long time genealogist. Always know how long because it's the same year my daughter was born that I started when I was pregnant for her. And my background was actually in computer science. So I came to genetics through computer science. And I had a family mystery I wanted to solve 25 years ago. And I called it Bennett Greenspan because I thought it was probably a scam that you could do Y-DNA testing. But it wasn't. And I started, and it's just like Janna said, it's this addictive drug. I never stopped. And here we are today, all of us.
Amazing. So now I'd love to ask you all what your favorite MyHeritage DNA tool is. I'm sure you use many tools all over many different services, but we want to hear what your favorite MyHeritage DNA tool is. Diane?
So I don't know if you can consider this a tool necessarily, but in my experience for myself and for other people, my favorite, I'm going to do air quotes here, tool is that MyHeritage seems to have many more international matches than other companies. And so I've been able to find matches for myself and other people at MyHeritage that just haven't tested anywhere else. And that's been a real gold mine of information. So my favorite tool is the composition of the database.
Janna, what is yours?
Mine, I think by far would be the fact that I can see the matches, or when I look at a match and I have the shared matches list, and I can see how much I share with those matches, and I can see how much my match shares with those matches, and that I can sort all the shared matches by the ones closest to my match. And that was, when I started using it, it was a key to open many Pandora boxes, but also solve many mysteries.
And for Roberta, yours?
I agree with everything both of my colleagues said, but I take the clusters, the auto cluster tool, and I do what Janna said. I take the spreadsheet and then I fill that information in so that I can see it at a glance about who's clustered. So that helps me a great deal to figure out which ancestors they share. And then, of course, I go and look on through lines and see which ones connect there.
Incredible. Thank you all for sharing that with us. So now we'll jump in. We've gotten many questions in advance from our audience, and I see more coming in. To all of our viewers out there, if you have questions, we may be able to get to some more that are put in here today as well. So definitely feel free to put questions that you might have about DNA for these lovely experts that we have joining us today. So we'll jump into our questions. Let's see, we have so many. We'll start with Diane. We have a question for you from Shirley. She sent it in and she asked, she said, I'm a newbie and I understand that the shared DNA matches that we were just talking about at MyHeritage are valuable for my research. What would be the best approach to use these?
Yeah, so you're right, Shirley, you've heard correctly. Shared matches, I think, in my opinion, is the most powerful tool in genetic genealogy. And so approach that we teach here at Your DNA Guide, we call it the plan. The plan at Your DNA Guide starts with what we call your best known matches. So someone that you already know your relationship to. So if you want to find your dad's mother, for example, your grandmother, you would need to find a best known match, someone who's a descendant of your grandmother through a different line than your own. So not your dad, but maybe your dad's sister or your first cousin. That person is your best known match. If you use the shared matches tool at MyHeritage on that best known match, the resulting list of matches will be related to you through that line. And that helps you kind of filter and get at the matches that we call your best mystery matches, the matches that are going to help you solve your mystery. So by starting with a match that maybe you've kind of dismissed before, you already know this person. So we don't spend that much time thinking about our matches that we already know. But really the matches that you already know are the key to helping you find the matches in your match list that you want to work with for a particular question.
Thank you, Diane. I see this comment here in our comment section from Jennifer Alvarez, and she said, Roberta and I are distant cousins. So I guess at MyHeritage, we're making matches even in a Facebook Live. So we'll see what other surprising connections we may discover today here in our Facebook Live. We have a question here for Roberta. And by the way, to our speakers, if any of you want to continue any thoughts from any of the questions, even if you weren't the one that answered it, please do jump in, feel free. So we have a question here for Roberta. Jerry asked, I'm a longtime researcher. I'm not an expert, but I research every day. My second maternal grandfather is on a marriage license, but it is not listed anywhere else to be found. I have a previously unknown surname that I'm closely related to, and it could be his, but I can't connect the dots. I've had help from 2 professional genealogists, and they can't find the connection. No pressure.
That makes me smile because no pressure. So let me see if I can find my magic wand. Oh, here it is. There's my magic wand. So I'll just wave this around and we'll see what we can come up with. What I would do if I were looking for that person, I would take the clusters that I have and the shared matches that I know for sure, and I would group them either using the dots, the colored dots, and then there'll be either a cluster you don't know that you can't group, or there'll be a group of people that you can't place, or people that don't have any dots, depending on how you do this. And then I would look at the trees for the people that you can't place, it's like, okay, it's not here, it's not there, I would look at those, and I would look for shared surnames, because MyHeritage gives you the list of ancestral surnames for these people, right? I would look at the list of ancestral names. I would take each one of those people and I would create a little spreadsheet and I would put their ancestral names in there. So I would take the people that I can't connect any other way, and I would put them together, and then I would look for that shared information. At that distance, you're probably going to share DNA with them as well. It would be very unusual if you didn't. So I would also look for people and how they're related to each other, because if you can find common ancestors between those people, and then you can show that you share the same DNA with at least some of those people, you're very far along the path to identifying that common ancestor. And especially since you think you might have a surname. Now, that could also be like his mother's surname, so you don't really know for sure. But that's the approach I would take. I would eliminate everybody that you can match, that you can place, and then I would look at the rest of them, beginning with the closest matches to you.
Okay, great. Hopefully that'll solve the problem after multiple professional genealogists have taken a look. We have a question here for Janna, and it's from a user, Joanne. And Joanne asked, I just received my MyHeritage DNA test results. I have decent matches and am interested in finding our mutual ancestor. What would be the best approach when contacting a DNA match? What should I say and mention? And this is such a great question, because I find, we have so many users who are just so apprehensive about this part of the process. So Janna, what do you suggest?
Well, I guess writing to matches has become an art, of itself. But I would say that the first goal before finding the common ancestors, the first goal is to establish a line of communication. I mean, you want that person to write back to you. And yes, first impressions matter. So you want to make the best impression ever. I would, just as a general approach, I would say be short, be simple, and be friendly. Now, when you start writing, okay, use that person's name, because it makes it a bit more personal. Use your own name. And in case you are writing for someone or you're researching for someone, identify yourself. Don't try to be someone who you're not. So identify, who you are. And in case you are writing on MyHeritage, you can see whether you are contacting the test taker or somebody who is managing, you would say managed by someone else. And if you are writing to somebody who manages the kit he might be managing many kits. And I have found in my experience that when I mention the DNA kit that I'm talking about, I receive more replies than if I don't. Because sometimes people say, well, I'm not going to work for that person, and I just don't get a reply. Sometimes that person might come back and say, well, who are you talking about? So it goes two ways, but I found that I received more replies if I do mention who I'm talking about. And then I would just say that I'm interested in finding the connection, and leave with a very simple question, something that person can answer without thinking too much. maybe the names of grandparents and grandparents. I wouldn't use parents because it's kind of too close. But if you get the names of grandparents or grandparents, that might lead you to starting a tree for that match. And just finish off with, not, saying best regards and again, your name. Now, one thing I would pay attention to, if you get a close match, and by close, I mean, I don't know, first cousin, sibling, half sibling, I would, before writing anything, I would screenshot everything, because when you're writing to someone who is a close match, it might be intimidating, and you might cause some, you might open something or a family secret that nobody knew about. So screenshot everything so you have the information, and in case that person is intimidated and shuts off his DNA kit, then you have the information. And above all, be patient. It took me a long while to realize that, oh my God, people do not check their emails every day or 10 times a day like I do. And sometimes I had cases when people wrote back to me a year later. So I'm not saying wait a whole year, but be patient and realize that the person on the other side does have a life, and I might not fit in to the plans that he has. So be patient. That would be my advice as well.
That's great advice. And I love that about being patient, and also about never giving up, because we hear so many times about people who, think that the answers are just not there and they're not coming. And that's typically when people, they're surprised, they get a surprise message or a surprise DNA results. So, and we get so many stories where people tell us, never, ever, ever give up. You just never know when the results, when the answer will come. So that's great advice. Thank you, Janna. Diane, we have a question for you from an anonymous user. I have been searching for my husband's unknown paternal great-grandfather with no success. His grandfather was born illegitimate. We have his birth certificate, so we know his mother's name, but no one knows anything about the father. Would a Y DNA test be recommended?
So there's a couple answers to this. The first is, you mentioned, I'm assuming it is a direct paternal. You said your father's grandfather. So I'm just making sure we're father to father to father here. If we are, then Y-DNA is a great choice. Y-DNA can help you research any man on your family tree if you find the right person to test. So you just need to trace that line directly down through that male line. It has to be father to son, father to son, father to son. And then for sure, I think Y-DNA is always worth your time, effort, energy, and money if you're researching a male and you have the right person to be tested. But in addition to that, this is a recent enough connection that you can also, and you should be also, using autosomal DNA. So the power is really in using the two things together, ideally. But even without the Y-DNA, you should be able to make significant progress just using autosomal DNA. Again, thinking about what Roberta was saying about making these groups of people and eliminating people that you already know are related to different lines. There are techniques that you can use, and especially with a powerful match labeling system like MyHeritage has, where you can, put those dots and labels on your matches. It really helps you just say, okay, all of these people are related to people I'm not interested in researching. And it does leave you with what we call your leftovers. It's this really relatively small group of matches in your match list that most likely relate to this missing line. And so by just following a few simple steps using that match labeling system, you are going to be able to find a group of matches that you can concentrate your efforts on. And that's going to ultimately be what you need to do in order to solve this. Y-DNA will be helpful, probably, but you can't really guarantee it. It really depends on who else has tested. So yes, I think you should do Y-DNA testing, but in the meantime, you can work your match list. And if you do it in a step-by-step, coherent, consistent way, you're going to make progress.
Okay, great. And I just wanted to remind everybody in our audience, those who are just tuning in now and people who weren't here at the beginning, we have 2 giveaways for today's session. We're giving away a MyHeritage DNA kit and a MyHeritage Complete Plan. Fantastic gifts for anyone in our audience. You could gift it to a friend, to a family member. So all that you have to do to enter is just tell us about a discovery, big or small, that you've made using MyHeritage tools and features, not just DNA, but any MyHeritage tools and features. So we're excited to see all of your stories and read a few of them out at the end. So feel free to share. In addition, if you have any questions for our speakers, please do let us know. Just jot it in the comments, and we're going through them and taking a look as we go. We're also putting links to all of our guests' websites, and please do take a look at those and save them for later. I see that Carol wrote, "Can never learn too much about DNA." And I think all of our guests will agree that that's just so true. Definitely, there's always room to learn, and I think that's what's so incredible. We have members of our audience who are more advanced, and then we have those who are just beginners, and you can see from the wide variety of questions as well that no matter where you are in your journey, there are always things that you can still learn about DNA and genetic genealogy. And MyHeritage tools and features, there's always room to grow and learn how to use them better. So we have a question here for Roberta. It's from Catherine, and Catherine asks, how far back date-wise does the MyHeritage DNA test reach?
Well, that's a great question, and there's no one answer to that. Part of the answer isn't really about how far back the test reaches, because the test reaches as far back as the DNA is shared. So the rule of thumb is roughly 5 or 6 generations, but I have solid matches that I've proven through triangulation with multiple people descended from the same ancestor that are 9 or 10 generations back. On my Akkadian lines, which have pedigree collapse, which is where people share the same ancestor on multiple lines, and there's a very small group of people to choose from for mates. I have matches even further back than that. So the real question is, do you share the DNA? Did you inherit the same segment as somebody else that is a descendant from that same ancestor? So generally we see at 5 or 6 generations, you're going to match everybody that's a second cousin or closer for sure. Beyond that, you may match some people, but not all people, but you likely will match some people that descend from a common set of ancestors significantly far back in the past. A lot of times I run out of records before I run out of DNA matches. So it depends. Just don't give up. I mean, that's why triangulation is so powerful, because you can find a segment, and once you know, based on the fact that I match 3 people descended through different children of this couple on this same segment, now you've identified that segment. So when you match another person on that same segment, if you pull them into the chromosome browser, then you can say, oh, okay, it's from that same line. It might not be the same couple exactly, but it's from the same genetic line. So I think that's really important, and I work every one of my matches, again, starting with the closest to the most distant, because the closest are the easiest ones to identify the ancestors.
Okay, thank you. We have a question here for Janna from Patricia. And Patricia asked, my mother is adopted and she just took a MyHeritage DNA test. The results are being generated. What are the best DNA tools at MyHeritage to start with? Once the results are ready, where do I begin?
Okay, hi, Patricia. Well, I would actually start before receiving my results. If you have any information or adoption papers for your mother, I would gather all the information that you can, whether it's dates, names, locations, and so forth. So have that ready just so you have it, and maybe you can use it later. And then once you have the results, go through the matches. And well, first of all, see you will have the matches organized by the one that has the most DNA with your mom will be the first, the first on the list. And then as going down, you're going to have less and less DNA, which means, further matches. So with MyHeritage, you can look at the possible relationships that match might have with your mother. I would go into the profile of those first few matches and see what information I can gather there. My next step would be my favorite tool, and that would be going into the shared matches and look at the shared matches that your mother shares with those people. And again, sorted by your mother, which means you will see more DNA or more matches that might be closer to your mother than to the match than to your mother. So you're sorted by the match of your mother. And I gotta say that a lot of time is spent on building trees for matches with the goal of building all those trees and then finding how the shared matches are connected to each other. And once you have a tree with several matches, you have more potential of finding how your mother would be fitted into that tree. One other thing I like looking at as a tool, and that is sorting the matches by location. And once you know where your mother was born, I always like to look at other matches that state that they come from the same location and see how they might be related to your mother. And then I think the biggest rule is fish in all the ponds. And that means make sure that your mother's DNA is in every database possible, so you can gather as many matches as you can, and then just go through the same process again.
Thank you, Janna. I see Michelle wrote, "Hello, ladies. Great to be here from the UK. So if any of you haven't yet, please do let us know where you're joining from. If there's anyone that has joined in the middle of today's session, we have amazing guests taking questions about DNA, MyHeritage tools and features, genetic genealogy, lots and lots of great questions that have come in, and hopefully we'll get to as many of them as we can. So let's get to the next one so that we don't waste any time. Let's see, we have a question here for Roberta. George says, pedigree collapse and endogamy are terms that are difficult to grasp for newcomers to the DNA world, and they're tossed around a lot. What is the difference? Oh, I think you're on mute. You're 1 moment. There we go.
Okay, that's a great question. And it is difficult to understand. I wrote a blog on pedigree collapse. If you want to read it, you can go to my blog and just type in pedigree collapse. So that will help you. But to answer your question, pedigree collapse is when you share the same ancestor in more than one place in your tree. So let's say that first cousins married each other, or second cousins or third cousins married each other a few generations back in time. Well, you share the ancestors that they shared with each other in multiple places in your tree now. So that's pedigree collapse, where your pedigree collapses into the same ancestor shared more than once. Now, how does that affect your genealogy? When you have pedigree collapse, you are much more likely to share more DNA from those shared ancestors than DNA from ancestors that aren't shared. Now, I said more likely because the further back in the tree you are, we don't know that. I wrote about that in the Washington case study on my blog as well, how we worked that out, how that worked. The other example is endogamy. And endogamy is kind of like pedigree collapse on steroids, because it's when you have entire populations that are descended from the same group of people. So it's generation after generation after generation of pedigree collapse. So that could happen because they're in a place where there's no other people available to marry. For example, the Acadians in Nova Scotia from the early mid 1600s to 1755, they married within their own community, the French people. So that is a case where we have pedigree collapse a lot of times and endogamy. So the people who descend from that population group tend to share a lot of DNA with each other. Sometimes we can figure out which ancestor it came from, and sometimes we can't because they're all intermarried with each other. Jewish people are a very, very common example of endogamy because they are, while they may or may not have been geographically isolated, they were certainly culturally isolated from the surrounding population. So they married within their same community for not just hundreds, but not just a few generations, but hundreds and sometimes thousands of years, depending on which group of Jewish people we're talking about. So other groups like the Mennonites, the Brethren, Native American populations, we see endogamy in all of those populations as well. So pedigree collapse is when you have a few ancestors, maybe just two or maybe even just one, who are shared in multiple places in your own tree. And endogamy is where you have a population of people who share a lot of DNA and so may not be able to be sorted out easily from each other. I hope that helped.
That was very helpful. I see that we got this question from Autumn, who's tuning in from upstate New York. Who said, what are the directions for the giveaway again? So just to remind everyone who's just tuned in, just let us know about any MyHeritage discovery that you've made, whether it's a tool or a feature or a historical record or an old photo that you were able to see more clearly using MyHeritage photo tools, or anything like that. Just let us know in the comments section, and you'll be entered to win. And we have two prizes today. We have a MyHeritage Complete Plan as well as a MyHeritage DNA Kit to give away. So very exciting giveaways there. Let's see. We have a lot of questions coming in. So let's see what else. Oh, Cindy actually has a follow-up, Roberta, to your question, to your answer. She said, my great-grandmother married her widow's half-brother. Would that be an example of pedigree collapse? They were Native American as well.
Okay. Yes, because assuming that your great-grandmother had children with her first husband, and then she married her half-brother, their ancestors, and then had more children with him, their ancestors would share ancestors. I hope that,
So
I hope that answered the question.
Can I add? I think I would technically call that what I call multiple relationships. So
Yes.
if this woman had descendants with her first husband and her second, those descendants would have what we call multiple relationships, which is a little bit different than pedigree collapse. So each individual person wouldn't have the same ancestor in their tree multiple times. That's pedigree collapses, as Roberta explained. When two people just have two relationships to each other, which these two sets of descendants would, they're siblings through their mother and half siblings essentially through their father. That's just multiple relationships. So just to complicate things further, not only do we have pedigree collapse and endogamy, but we also have multiple relationships. So all three of those things get kind of jumbled together, but they are different from each other.
And on the Washington project that I worked on, their descendants then married. So it was like,
right. Yes. Then you would.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it was insane. And actually, Diane, I wound up using some of your mathematical equations and then simplifying it so that we could figure this out, because it was very, very confusing. And I do also want to add that one of the things that's really difficult when we answer questions for people is we're trying to visualize your tree in our heads. And you know your tree really well. So you can say like married the brother of her widow, but it's really widower, but it's like, so we're trying to figure out what you actually mean when we can't see your tree. So sometimes that's challenging for us because we hope we're giving you a correct answer based on what we understand your tree to be in our head.
Right.
Family trees are complicated.
Yeah.
I have
Just
a piece
like
of paper and
family
a pen in
itself.
case I need it. I need to draw stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a question here from John for Janna. And John asked, he said, I took a DNA test to try and trace one of my birth parents. 2 DNA matches came through showing up as first cousins. One was 10.07% and the other is 16.01%. Both of these ladies are actual first cousins, and it seems that my connection to them as a first cousin also is through the biological parent that I was trying to find. Can anyone tell me why there's a larger shared percentage with one than with the other? I have spoken to the lady who shares 16.01% with me, and she shares more DNA with me than she does with her actual first cousin.
Okay. I think that it's important to understand the inheritance patterns of DNA and also the fact that there's a random distribution of DNA. And each amount of DNA has an average and has a range. And wouldn't it be amazing if we had a mathematical table that says this amount of DNA equals this relationship? But it doesn't work that way because relationship with amounts of DNA, they overlap. Now, 16 was it, and then 10. If we look at the ranges, both numbers, both the 16 and the 10, and we look at first cousin basically falls within the range of both numbers, of both values. And so the different amounts of DNA I would attribute that to the different distribution of DNA. But as long as it falls into the first cousin, it doesn't mean that they are better first cousins than he might be. And then as a first cousin, if we go back, what connects them, or what Diane refers to as generation of connection, it's not that far because first cousins share grandparents. So I would, if he's talking to those ladies, John, if you're talking to them, I would just get all the information I can in order to build the tree up to the grandparents, and then write down or fill in all their children, and try and figure out from there who is likely to be your, whether, and I don't know if we're talking about a paternal, looking for a father or looking for a mother. But then once you have all those siblings, then it's time to look beyond the DNA. It's time to look at ages. It's time to look at locations. And once you go through, some of them might not be alive. And then you might need what we would call target testing. And that's if one of the siblings is not alive anymore, then maybe if you don't get a confession on the way, then maybe one of the descendants will be willing to test, and then you will find a connection with one of the siblings. That would be your half sibling, and then you would know that it's a mother or a father, depending on who you're searching for and how you might be connected. So also take into account, especially when we talk about males, that person, if I was joking about a confession, but that person, especially like I said, when we talk about males, because female do know, who they gave birth to, they might not know that you exist. It might be a previous relationship that they don't even know that that girl that they separated from got pregnant and had a baby and gave him up for adoption. So take that into account. And that brings me to, again, something I spoke about earlier: be patient with the other side and be in compassion with the other side. Just realizing that it might come as a surprise, and there's another person with feelings and thoughts and emotions that we need to consider. But that should be, having those two first cousins, that should be that's definitely doable.
Thank you, Janna. I see a question in the audience that I think is a very common question, and I'm going to put it out there, and whoever wants to answer can just jump in. It actually came in through our YouTube streaming. We're streaming on YouTube, on our YouTube channel at the same time as our Facebook page. And the question is it uncommon to be a completely different ethnicity than you thought? So this is talking about an aspect of our DNA testing that we haven't really addressed yet today. Is it common for there to be surprises there?
Can you repeat the question? Because
Sure.
I kind of heard it, one word I heard and then the other I didn't. It was kind of
he's
cut
just
off.
wondering.
Sure.
He's just wondering, essentially, he received ethnicity results that are surprising,
Hmm.
and that's very common, actually. So you're not alone. Don't feel like you're somewhere out moored without tethers. There's a couple of ways you can look at it. There's a couple of ways I would interpret you saying it's not as you expected. So one thing to keep in mind is that the company, like MyHeritage, has to label a category with a name of a category. So they have to say it's somewhere, right? So maybe they'll say it's Germany, for example. But if you think about where Germany is on the map, it touches lots of other countries. And it's not, there are no geographical boundaries in our DNA, right? And so a lot of times what I've seen is people see a result, the name of a country, for example, like Germany, in their ethnicity results, that surprises them. And they're like, hold up, I have no German ancestors. And so it kind of shocks you a little bit and makes you wonder, am I who I think I am? When really the category German actually fits into, say, your Danish ancestry. And you think, wait a second, those are two very, very different people. But if you look at the way the maps are drawn, for example, in MyHeritage, what you'll see is this, concentrated color, and then it kind of bubbles out into these other regions. And so pay attention to those other regions that are still encompassed by the color, and just realize that they have to name it something, but that doesn't mean what it always means to us. So that's the first thing, is that it's possible that what you're seeing actually fits into what you know. You just didn't realize that it did because they're talking about it in a different way than you would talk about it. The second reality is that, yeah, maybe you do have an ancestor from somewhere you didn't know you had them. And that's the exciting part about discovering things about yourself, is that our ethnicity can point us to ancestors in locations that we had previously not considered were part of our family tree. And so beginning to investigate that, one way that you might do that is to look at the ethnicity results of your siblings. Remember, you and your siblings only share half of your DNA. So having your siblings take a DNA test and see if their results are different than yours, people are like, wait a second, we're very different. And if I had walked up to you on the street and asked, are you different than your sibling? You would have said, oh yeah, I'm very different. But somehow seeing it in our ethnicity results shocks us. But you're only half the same genetically. So there's a lot of factors that go into what actually comes out in your ethnicity results. But you and your sibling, if you are very different, you're both still representing the same group of people, which is crazy, right? And so get a bigger picture. I call it getting a second opinion. Having your siblings take an ethnicity test gives you that second opinion. So we have something in the workbook that I created, Your DNA Guide, the workbook. We have a little take your ethnicity results from all of the companies that you've tested with and combine them into one to give you kind of a better picture of what you may actually have in your DNA. Can also be helpful. So That was a little bit rambly, but I'll open it up to Janna or to Roberta if you guys have other thoughts.
No, I think you summed it up perfectly. One thing, the only thing I can add to that is that, yes, sometimes, especially if you're an adoptee, and you have your adoption papers and you know where you come from, or you don't know that you were adopted. And then sometimes you discover through that, if nobody else tested, but then you look at your ethnicity estimates, and I don't want to scare anyone, but that's just another possibility, that your ethnicity estimate will reveal things that you did not expect. And that is something, again, when you take a DNA test, you have to be prepared for.
Definitely, that's very wise. We have a question here for Roberta, and the question is from Kelly. My big question is how to best sort paternal and maternal DNA matches. And I'll just unmute you here. There we go.
Thank you. I want to comment really, really quickly on the ethnicity before I go to that one. One of the things, especially in the U.S., people sometimes are looking for, or not, a Native American, African American, European. I encourage people who are looking for those kinds of things to focus on the continental level and not so much on which country in Europe, because if you look at the size of Europe and the states, I mean, it'd be hard for someone to tell the difference between Indiana and Illinois, just like it's hard to tell the difference between the Netherlands and Germany. So a lot of times focusing on the continental level is more accurate than the actual country level. So just to follow up on that. I'm really sorry. Could you repeat that next question for me?
Sure. Yes. So the question is from Kelly, and she said, "How do I best sort my paternal from my maternal DNA matches?"
Okay, that's a great question. What I encourage people to do is well, first of all, if you're really lucky and you have a half sibling, that's great because you already know it's maternal or paternal, so you can look at shared matches with the half sibling. But if you're not that fortunate, and most of us aren't that fortunate, what happens is that we need to pick the closest match that we can identify. So my first cousin on my mother's side, and now I'm going to create a tag, a label for my mother's side. And I'm going to pick pink, let's just say. It doesn't have to be. And now the people who I match in common with the shared matches with my mother's first cousin, I'm going to go through and label them. But now I know that there's somebody else that I might share DNA with that is different than my mother's first cousin. So one of those other people, I share DNA with them, but not always the same people. So I go through my match list and I label them maternal and paternal using that same process. And then I start scrolling down and it's like, okay, who isn't labeled yet? And then I go in and I look at who I match. So I'm like, oh, I know that that's person on my mother's side or my father's side. So that's the process I use. You can also use clustering to do the same thing. Once you know a few of those, you can order an auto cluster, and then you're like, okay, I know that these people in this group are from my mother's side, and this people in this group are from my father's side. Now, having said all of that, if your mother and father are related to each other, even if generations back in time, or they're from an endogamous population, that may not work as well, because remember, the DNA is shared among many people. So if both your parents are Jewish, you're going to have a lot of people on both sides that you match with both parents. So I would, in that case, focus on your closest matches and their closest matches with you, because that'll be your more telling matches for the more recent generations, and not the smaller matches from the more distant endogamous relationships.
Okay. This is just so much fun. I wish we could go on for so much longer, but I think we are nearing the end of our hour. So we'll just take one last question. And of course, anyone who has other questions that we didn't get to, we'll collect them, and maybe we can convince our speakers to do a follow-up at some point later on, because this is just so lovely and such a great combination. We love seeing these experts come together. So we'll just take one last question we have here for Diane. And Diane, there's a question here from Geraldine, and she said, all my DNA matches are rather small and distant ones. None of them are above 40 centimorgans of shared DNA. Can I work with these, or should I just sit back and wait for future closer DNA matches?
So first of all, it's important to consider what is your goal. So if you're looking for a missing, say, 3 times great-grandparent, you're going to need 4th cousin matches to help you. And we wouldn't expect 4th cousin matches to share more than 40 centimorgans. And so you would have to work with those matches if that was your goal, to find a 3 times great-grandparent. So it's just important to understand that the lower you go on the centimorgan scale, the less certain you can be about having a single recent common ancestor connection with your match. So, you know, Roberta was saying she's using matches that are small because she's done a lot of work to validate in her own mind and with her own genealogy and with her paper research that these matches are who they say they are, or who she has found them to be. But it takes a lot of work and a lot of data to be that confident. And so when you're working with lower centimorgan matches, and really anybody above 20 centimorgans is theoretically what I would consider to be a confident DNA match, someone who's worth your time, effort, and energy to look into. Below 20 centimorgans, there's a lot of schools of thought about what to do with those matches. But I think in general, it's just important that if you go below that mark, you have to be very, very careful, because lots of those matches will not be related to you through a single recent common ancestor. A lot of those matches are sharing DNA with you because you share a common population group. And so it's just, where do you want to spend your precious research hours? Do you want to spend them chasing a 12 centimorgan match that may or may not connect to you? If you do, you better be confident for other reasons that that match is important, and not just picked them randomly off your DNA match list. So again, if you want to be really confident, stay above 20. And if you want to go below that, just understand the risk that you're taking in possibly being a rabbit hole.
Thank you, Diane. So now it's really my pleasure to announce our winners of our giveaways that we have today. Thank you, everyone who left comments in the comment section. We had some really, really lovely comments and stories here that I think are worth it for us all to go and read, because they just show the power of DNA testing and family history, and how much we can learn about our family and about our past and our ancestors. So definitely worth reading. And here are a couple that I'm going to highlight today. So our first winner of a MyHeritage Complete Plan is Karen Harrison. And Karen wrote to us and said, I have Norwegian ancestors that I matched DNA with at MyHeritage, and we've been emailing and exchanging old photos and letters. So much fun. So thank you, Karen. That's so lovely, especially when your relatives that you match with are around the world. I don't know where you're located, but I'm guessing it's not in Norway. So that must be especially exciting. And I think something that's very special with our technology and DNA matching at MyHeritage, a lot of global users. So congratulations, Karen, and please be in touch with us to claim your MyHeritage Complete Plan. And our second winner today of the MyHeritage DNA Kit is Alicia Weiss, and she wrote to us and said, through MyHeritage Trees and Smart Matches, I learned of a 90-year-old Holocaust survivor from a branch of a family on which I've been working for years. collecting descendants of survivors. I traveled to Hungary to meet this incredible survivor cousin last summer. Her granddaughter and I have been collaborating since the smart matches appeared. Also, another incredible story, and I think what's so nice about this is that it happened through my Heritage Smart Matches. Those are tree-to-tree matches, and just another fantastic tool. Not a DNA tool, but so useful and so helpful, and what an incredible discovery. So congratulations, and please be in touch with us, Alicia, to claim your prize as well, a My Heritage DNA kit. So it's now my honor to say thank you to our guests today. We had such a lovely time. It was so nice hosting you, and I hope that we will be able to do it again sometime. So thank you, Diane. Thank you, Janna, and thank you, Roberta. And if each one of you wants to leave our viewers just with one last comment, maybe lesson or something that you just want to impart on our viewers, then let us know.
I have a last thought, and I want to encourage people to check back often, because I think people forget sometimes. And if you manage multiple kits, like you manage one for your sibling or first cousin, check their kit too, because there may be a match there waiting for you with information, either DNA or smart matches, that is going to solve one of your questions that you don't even expect. So just don't forget to check back. It's evergreen.
Yeah, my last thought is, I saw a couple people who are pretty new to using DNA in their family history in the chat. So welcome to you. And my message to everybody is you can do this. This is learnable. It's a new language. It feels a little bit overwhelming, especially at first. But if you're consistent and you show up and you come to stuff like this that's free for you to access and watch, you'll get it. And it just is going to take a minute. So be patient with yourself and just try it. Just keep your hands in the mix. Keep trying it. You can do it.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce Diane. Like 10 years ago, I knew nothing. And these beautiful ladies were there when I started, and I will be forever grateful. So yeah, like Diane said, it's doable. And one last thing from me is never forget that on the other side, there's a person with a whole world that we need to take into consideration, and not just be, I want this and I want that. On the other side, there's a person. So be compassionate and be patient. That's my advice.
Thank you all, and thank you to all of our viewers for joining us today. I just want to let you know about our next Facebook Live that we'll be having in October, Tuesday, October 29th, with Daniel Horowitz. And it will be about your family in the newspapers. So make sure to tune in, and we'll be advertising it before then as well. And if you want to rewatch today's session, you can just go to the My Heritage Facebook page, and under the video section, you'll be able to rewatch. There's a lot of amazing material here. So if you want to see any of it again, take notes, definitely worth rewatching. Thank you all, and I hope that no matter where you are in the world, you have a great day or night. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.